Have you ever met someone who never learned by his mistakes? Israelites were like that. Again and again they turned their backs on God, and God handed them over to their enemies to punish them. One time he handed them over to the Philistines for 40 years. At that time, there was an Israelite couple who had never been able to have children. An angel appeared to the woman and said, "You're going to become pregnant and give birth to a baby boy. He is to be dedicated to God from the day of his birth to the day of his death. As a sign, he must never cut his hair. And you, from now on, must not drink alcohol or any forbidden food." Well, 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby boy and she named him Samson. And from that day onwards, God was with him. The Holy Spirit was preparing him for his future ministry of opposing the Philistines. When he grew up, he saw a Philistine young lady. He said to his parents, "I want to marry that girl." They said, "Oh, isn't there any Israelite young ladies you could marry?" But this was God's plan. Samson insisted, so his parents went and spoke to the parents of the Philistine girl. The marriage was arranged. Now the Philistines gave Samson 30 young men to be his companions at his marriage. He gave them a riddle. He said, "If you solve this riddle, on the last day of the feast, I'll give you 30 sets of clothing." Now they couldn't solve it, so they pressured his new wife to find out the answer. Samson was furious. He went out and he killed 30 Philistines and took their clothes and gave them to the 30 young men. Then he went home in a huff. When he went to collect his new wife, the father thought that he had abandoned her, so he'd given her to his best man to marry. Samson was furious. He went out and he burnt all the Philistine fields. The grain was ready to harvest, and their vineyards, and their olive groves. Well, the whole Philistine nation was furious. They mobilized their army and surrounded an Israelite town and said, "Bring out Samson, or else." 3,000 Israelite men went to Samson and said, "Please, let us hand you over to the Philistines." So Samson allowed them to tie him with ropes, and they took him to the Philistines. There was a great shout of victory. The Philistines had Samson. Samson broke the ropes, grabbed the jawbone of a donkey which was lying on the ground, and killed 1,000 Philistines. Oh, a bit later, Samson fell in love with another Philistine young lady, and she wheedled out of him the secret to his great strength. He said, "My hair has never been cut. If my hair is cut, I'll become like an ordinary man." She told the Philistines, and while Samson was asleep, they came and cut off his hair, bound him in chains, gouged out his eyes, and threw him in prison. Set him to work grinding the grain in the prison. A few months later, they had a big festival where they praised their God for giving them their enemy Samson into their hands. The temple was full. There were 3,000 people on the roof of the temple. Someone said, "Bring out Samson! Bring out Samson!" They took him out of the prison and put him in the middle of the temple besides the 2 pillars which were holding up the temple. Samson put his hand on the pillars and said, "Oh God, please give me strength one more time." And he pushed, and the whole temple collapsed. So in his death, Samson killed more Philistines than he had in his whole life. That's how God saved the people of Israel, through Samson.